Dahlia Lithwick joins us from Newsweek with a piece she wrote called "We Can't Execute Them, but Should We Lock Up Teens for Life?" Dahlia, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, you know, you didn't mention him in your piece here, but the guy that jumped to mind was Lee Boyd Malvo, but the problem is it's a little different situation because he actually killed people, along with John Muhammad, and you're talking about people who didn't. First, let's be clear. For kids who are underage, under 18, if they kill, one, can they be executed? Two, can they be put in jail for life?
They cannot be executed. In 2005, the Supreme Court definitively ruled in Roper versus Simmons, 5-4, Justice Anthony Kennedy writing for the majority, they cannot be executed. So the question, your second question, can they be sentenced to life without parole, was the case everyone was waiting for. And this week, on Monday, the Supreme Court heard that case. And so we obviously don't know the answer yet, but we know that the court is going to have to make a decision on that second question by June. And
did you get a sense from the questioning which direction they might be leaning in?
Well, it was a really interesting situation because in Roper, the predicate idea that Kennedy rested everything on was this brain science, was that teenage brains are different. And they're different neurologically, and they're undeveloped, and you cannot make determinations about teenagers based on their conduct before they're 18. So then the question becomes, if you can't execute them because they're not culpable like adults, can you then throw them away without a chance of a parole hearing across their lifetimes? And it was really, obviously, all eyes were on Kennedy at oral argument. And it's really interesting because the one side that was representing these two young men in Florida who were sentenced to life without parole, one at age 13, one at age 17, lawyers for them were saying that's completely analogous here. If you can't execute them, how can you let them die in prison? Isn't that essentially the same thing? Lawyers on the other side, lawyers for the state of Florida, were saying, no. Roper stood not for the proposition that teenagers are different, stood for the proposition that death is different. And so depending on how you saw the case framed, whether Roper really stood for the notion that death is different or teenagers are different, that was at the heart of argument on Monday.
So that people understand those cases, it gives you a better sense on a gut level of the hard decision to be made here. The 13-year-old robbed a 72-year-old woman, and they came back into her house and raped her. Okay, I'm right about that, right?
Well, certainly that's what he was. What he was convicted of. He still maintains that he was innocent, and there's really equivocal. There's very, very serious questions about the quality of his defense and the quality of the evidence against him.
Okay, so he was convicted of that. So the question is, I mean, that's a heinous act, obviously, as bad as it gets. So, I mean, if you don't get life for that, what do you get life for is the question. But then on the other hand, he's 13, and I remember when I was 13, I remember when my nephews were 13, and that is not, you're not the same person you were at 13. I mean, that's crazy. You're obviously not fully developed. But, Dahlia, what's the alternative? Do we say that they get a parole hearing every, 10 years, 20 years? How would it work?
Well, that's one of the you've nailed exactly the issue that was bothering the justices, is this question of counting beans. How do we create a regime that works? So, your set of questions is one bunch of pragmatic problems. Do they get a parole hearing when they're mature enough? Do they get one automatically when they're 21? Do they get one at age 47 because it's a good age? And then there's another set of questions that's kind of built right into your question, which is, what's the difference between being 17 3/4 and 18? In other words, if you're going to start drawing lines, can you really say that a 17 3/4-year-old isn't culpable, but the day after your 18th birthday you are? And so enormous amount of energy at oral argument on both sides went to these questions of, these numbers are totally arbitrary. And, of course, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, well, of course numbers are arbitrary, but you can't get a tattoo when you're a teenager. You can't drink. You can't vote. We draw lines all the time. But one of the subtexts of this oral argument was, if we draw a line at 16 and say we're not going to send anyone to life without parole when they're 16, next year you're going to come up with a 17-year-old and say draw a line there. So there's this slippery slope problem going in every which way in this case, which made it very, very hard for both sides to really stand for the idea that we can have a bright line rule.
Now, 8 of the justices here are fairly irrelevant, if I've got this right, and if I don't, let me know. The 4 conservatives are definitely going to say, yes, you can put him away for life. The four quasi-liberals are going to say, no, you shouldn't, and then Kennedy's just going to decide this case by himself. Is that roughly right?
Well, I would have said so going into argument. I think going into argument, I would have predicted that's how it was going to go. But three of the most conservative justices on the court, Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Sam Alito, and Justice Antonin Scalia, and remember the fourth is Clarence Thomas, who doesn't talk at oral argument. He hasn't spoken in years, so we have no idea where he's at. But the other three were actually quite bothered by this, and they were bothered by the idea of creating a bright-line rule that said, in effect, you can send a 6-year-old to prison to life without parole. It just seemed that there was a big difference between the case of the 13-year-old and the 17-year-old in their minds, and that there was this sense, this visceral sense that 13 is just too young. So John Roberts started proposing a very, very nuanced, complicated idea of having a kind of a proportionality review, and we have a basis for an appeal where judges would take the age of the offender into account. But he was certainly not saying, throw away the key when they're 7 because I'm John Roberts and I'm pro-prosecution. I mean, it was not a black-white pro-con argument at all. It looked like at least those three justices were trying to craft a compromise that wasn't creating an arbitrary rule at some arbitrary age. That clearly bothered them. But some kind of system to give extra protection to juveniles.
Well, that's encouraging. But, if they do that complicated algorithm, isn't that legislating from the bench, according to conservatives?
Well, I think what they would say is they're trying this entire doctrine, the Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual doctrine, is crazy. I mean, it's just bonkers because it essentially says figure out what evolving standards of decency, that's the quote, figure out what that requires. In other words, putting someone in the stockades may have been okay to the framer. It's not okay today. So as soon as you assume that we're in this weird, squishy world of, how many states do it, how many don't, is the trend for it, is this trend against it, you're going to get even the conservatives conceding that, okay, we can't just say this is the way it was in the time of Jefferson and Madison, therefore it's what it is. So the very nature of the Eighth Amendment, and it's a very weird doctrine because of that, allows for some of the squishiness that lets the justices get away with crafting these kinds of compromises. One other thing that's very interesting is that the United States is the only country that sentences youth, juveniles under 18, to life without parole. And everyone was waiting for that to become a big issue at argument because Anthony Kennedy really cares what international opinion, international treaties and doctrine says. It wasn't mentioned.
Dahlia, we're totally out of time, but I got to ask one quick follow-up. I read that in your piece. It's not we're the only developed country. You're saying even Saudi Arabia, China, Botswana, whatever it is, nobody does it outside of us.
That's what all the data is showing, that we're it.
Wow. Well, congratulations to us. All right. Dahlia Lithwick from Newsweek. Thanks, as always, for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. Young Turks.
Watch more clips at theyoungturks.com.